What amazes me, because of, again, what we're doing in the village, is there is this lovely sequence of, you get the medieval stuff, which is really crude. I think Phil described it like dog biscuit, and it is. It's very crude stuff. When it's a bit more refined, it starts to get a glaze on it. But then that tradition of earthenware goes right the way through the Middle Ages, goes on into the 16th, 17th, 18th century, still with a green or a reddish glaze on it. So you end up with these big pans and these bread crocks and these egg pans and things like that. And then you start to see the influence of a more industrialised pottery. And the first thing they do is try and make stuff like the Chinese stuff, like the Dutch stuff, like the stuff from Staffordshire. They try and camouflage this ordinary earthenware stuff until Staffordshire kicks in, and then it sort of basically just swamps the market. And when you think of that blue and white stuff, a lot of the clay for that comes from Devon. In days before there were proper canals, proper turnpike roads, it somehow gets to Staffordshire. The decoration on it is transfer. It's not painted on or anything like that. It's a very elaborate transfer process. Right. And then it's beautifully fired stuff.
I wanted to ask you, moving on from pottery, I wanted to ask you about, you come to a place like this, typical English church, manor house, all the rest of it. What are the key documents, just the headlines of them, that you would want to get together? We were talking about it last night, what the researchers have got. Suddenly they came up with this 1946 aerial, which
1947 air picture,
hang on a minute. Critical. Which bits of documents related to this site are the ones that seem to tick the right boxes?
Well, it depends what questions you want to know. I mean, inevitably, if you wanted to know about the 19th century population, you'd be asking something different.
Well, what we want to know is that big load of field in the middle, was that occupied by a medieval village that joined up with our bit of the...
So one of the two critical things to start with are the early maps. Most places in the country have got a tithe map prepared in about 1840 as a result of the Tithe Commutation Act in 1835, and that is like a real benchmark, because they survey every parish, they give the landowner, the tenant, the land use, the value, and critically the name of the field.
And where do you find these? If you're an ordinary Joe, where do you go?
Most historic counties in the country will have a county record office. Right. It's often in County Hall, or very often it's a purpose-built building, and the staff invariably are very helpful. They'll tell you what there is. So that's your very first point of call, is the tithe map, because it gives you the field names, and very often a field like this is called something like Townfield, because it had the township in it. If you do that first, you then find out any other earlier maps. The second thing is aerial photographs, right? Now, the best thing of all, of course, is to fly yourself. If you've got a tame pilot, that is fantastic, because you can fly at different times of the year, different light conditions, light frost, low sun, parched out grassland. All of that would be fantastic. Most of us can't do that, or can't do it regularly enough. The best source of aerial photographs to start a study like this are those taken by the RAF between about 1944 and 1948. For some reason they flew the whole country many times, and they flew it in conditions that are considered inappropriate today, with low sunlight in the winter. So they're ideal for showing earthworks and so on. These all now live at the National Monuments Record in Swindon, although when I first used them, they were kept in cupboards in Prince Consort House on the embankment. And when I went and looked at them, they'd say, "Oh, do you want to take any away with you?" They were just considered rubbish, basically.
I remember we did a shoot where, for some reason, the records for the tithe maps hadn't come up.
Yeah.
And you looked at them and you missed something on the tithe map, or you didn't get them soon enough or something.
Yeah, there's Templecombe.
And it was the absolute answer to that site, that tithe map, wasn't it? Templecombe.
Because we were looking for the site of a Knights Templars monastery, and they were exempt from tithes. So when they mapped the tithe map in the 19th century, they would put on that land that didn't have to pay tithes, and that gives you where the monastery was.
So basically, I imagine a big table with a local group, and this is before they've dug, before they've thought
before
about
they've gone
excavation,
outside.
before they've gone outside. Probably in the winter, they've got a nice big table together. You've got the Tithe Map on there.
Any
or
other
a copy
early
of
maps.
It. Early maps.
Yeah.
You've got aerial photographs.
And of course later Ordnance Survey
A good
maps,
OS map.
of which the best one, I'm not a great fan of the Ordnance Survey, but the best map that they ever produced was the 1886 6-inch and 25-inch.
Yeah.
They're beautiful maps. They've even got individual trees drawn on them.
I mean, when you go to other countries that haven't got our OS maps, you realise what an amazing thing even just a modern OS map is. It's like complete history. Place name evidence. We talked about field names.
Yes, you then need to get into the documents really, and without getting into the original documents, if your county has got a Victoria County history team, and these are terribly threatened, of course, in the present cuts. In the forces of darkness and evil are now in charge. They're cutting
message from the author there. But
VCH teams are being slashed, which is a pity, because that is usually a really nice, concise account of a parish, the documents that are available, the manors, the church, all that sort of stuff. Even if that isn't published, there's sometimes a file on a particular parish held. So you could look at the file even if the parish wasn't dealt with. But then that gets you into all the other documentary sources really, of which, I mean, you mentioned place names. If the English Place Name Society have done your county, and they've done Shropshire, for example, there will be a volume that covers this area, which will have village names, field names, river names.
We're not going to mention the name of this place just yet, but we've already managed to take the name of this back from the current name to the previous name. So place names are very useful. One of the
things like Doomsday Book, you see. I mean, everybody's heard of Doomsday Book. Doomsday Book I always describe as a very, very thin layer of leaves over an enormous great pit, right? It is not for the inexperienced, because it's a death trap really, but nevertheless it's the first record that you have for most places.